To clickbait or not to clickbait? That is the question.
Welcome to the Vlogpastors Podcast, a podcast all about the stories and strategies of sharing God's love in the digital world. Now, here are two pastors that love to put a camera in their face and walk around in public. They are the Michael and Dwight of digital ministry, JARROD Brown and Joshua Verwers.
Hey everybody, I am Joshua Verwers. And the laughing sound you hear is from...
And I'm JARROD Brown, and this is episode 55. Dwight and Michael. Oh, my goodness. I hadn't seen that one. That was good.
Yes. And hey, whether you are catching us on a video replay here on YouTube or over on Spotify, or you're listening to us in audio version on your favorite podcast player, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, and remember, you can shape this conversation just by hopping into the comments. We want to hear from you every Wednesday, 10:30.
And speaking about jumping into the show and shaping the way things go, this comment today that we received, which was to clickbait or not to clickbait, actually came from one of the viewers over here on YouTube, Charles Nickens. He had just asked that question, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What is clickbait? Should we use clickbait? And is it wrong for Christians to do it? I don't know, something like that. JARROD, we haven't discussed any of this stuff. We haven't looked at what's it going to be like. I just now realized I wasn't even flipping back and forth from the screen.
That's
so
all right.
I was watching the replay.
They're like, in your head.
They're like, who is this guy? But what are your thoughts on... let me back this up. What do you define clickbait as? Because in our pre-show and the pre-show, we were talking about words and different definitions. You know how like everywhere in the U.S. we have this childhood game, Duck, Duck, Goose, but apparently Minnesota is the only one of the 50 states that is strange, and they call it Duck, Duck, Gray Duck. Or even how I refer to that sugary carbonated drink as being pop. Others in the chat with us, they said soda. And you're from the great country of Texas, and you say Coke. So words are hard. Words mean different things.
Too, aren't they, Dean?
So what are your thoughts on clickbait? What is clickbait to you?
Okay, clickbait to me is, I have a wider definition. I would say clickbait would include enticing thumbnails or enticing someone to click on something as well. But I think most people refer to clickbait as that thin gray line that's on the other side of enticing content. So say I come up with a video, I've made the thumbnail for it, and I want people to click on it. And so if I hit in an enticing one, so meaning by that I mean what is in the video is actually in the thumbnail, then I have gotten away with an enticing thumbnail. If I am at a skydiving and I've never gone skydiving before, and all of a sudden it's a video about the farm, then I have transitioned over past that thin gray line. I might have mentioned like I would love to go skydiving one day in the video, and people think that they're watching a skydive video. Now I'm into clickbait. That's what I would say is clickbait. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, well, words mean things.
And it evolves
I like
over
to
time.
go the what?
And it evolves over time, which is the second part I think of this conversation.
It does. So for me, this whole thing comes down to I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. For me, clickbait. What is clickbait? Maybe it's growing up with my grandpa always taking us fishing and going places, but with that, one of the things that we always had was we would have obviously bait. So you've got bait that you're fishing with. Now, what kind of bait? Now, obviously the bait is meant to attract something like a fish onto the hook. And you use bait in different types of hunting and stuff like that. So if we're thinking about this, we can even use the Christian perspective because we're to be fishers of men, right?
Oh my goodness. Come on, church it up.
You like the church it up? So in the vlog pastor context, in a digital ministry type of a context, I look at clickbait as in it is the bait on the hook that is hoping to catch the audience. So what am I using to entice them and to reel it in? Now, growing up, we always use live bait. Like, that's all it was. It was live bait.
Minnows.
And we didn't even use minnows that often. We just used earthworms. But up here, it was easy to get earthworms because we've got nice, rich soil up here. So they're just all over the place. And the fish that we would use, they just loved the earthworms. So that was easy. Either way, occasionally with minnows, live bait. That's pretty much always what we used. But there were others that they would use fake worms, like worms that are made out of rubber.
Oh, yeah.
And they would use those. Why? Because they were a little bit more rigid. Because if you're using live bait, all of a sudden somebody would bite it and then they'd pull it away. And then you're just left with a little, and then you got to take it off and, rehook a new one. Whereas with, the rubber, the silicone, whatever artificial material they were made out of. And there was always this debate. No, you've got to have real, or no, you've got to use fake because you'll catch more. It's more effective. It's the never-ending debate. Is it live bait? Is it not live bait? So when it comes to clickbait, it's bait that is meant to get them to click. That's the purpose. It's like we're trying to get you to click on it because we want people to watch our stuff. Like, obviously. We're not just making this stuff for ourselves. If we were, we wouldn't have YouTube channels that are made public. All we would be using is just setting them in there just for an archival purpose, and it would be solely private, and that's it. But that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because we feel like we have a message that we want to share. We want people to watch, to listen, to view that message. You can't get the view without the click. How do you get the click? Bait. And that's the way I kind of see it.
I've never considered the whole fishing. It was in your thumbnail and everything, but I don't think of it that way. I haven't thought of it as bait. Yeah. But that makes a lot of sense because I was thinking even in your illustration of real versus the fake, that speaks to a lot of what I see out there. What is popular is the flashy neon orange and yellow worm.
Right.
And that's the thing that reels them in. Whereas there's another school of thought because it's flashy, it's out there, it's slapstick, it's boom, 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 fast edits and stuff is probably what you're going to get on the other side of that click. Now, the other is somebody who's taken their time a lot longer. They didn't go to the store and just pick up something when they might have, but they have mined their own minnows, or earthworms or their bait. And they have taken the time and crafted something that's going to put off an aroma because they believe that there's something about that bait that's going to attract the right kind of fish. That's a very interesting little breakdown. I've never thought about the fishing, the actual fishing side of it, because that represents my philosophy. I don't like, although I do it, if we're going to talk about this right now, I don't like the flashy plastic bait.
Right.
Philosophy. And I don't need millions. That would be great if it's the right kind of fish.
Right.
I'm more of the real bait. I need to find the image, the words, the communication that connects with the right kind of fish that I'm trying to, because I don't need a million perch latching onto this thing. I want my big mouth bass. Every time.
Right. Well, and so here's the other thing. When we use this in, like with that fishing analogy, the right bait to catch the right fish.
Yeah.
I mean, because not every bait works the same. So that's one of those that knowing who you're trying to catch, what eyeballs are you actually trying to get on it? That can really help. There's a video that I will link in the show notes or in the description. And the video is from the channel Veritasium. Are you familiar with them, Jared?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he did this video, and for those that don't know Veritasium, Veritas is truth. And so it's a channel all about just sharing truth. So they did this video a while back that was called, like, Clickbait is Unreasonably Necessary. Unreasonably Effective. And so that's the kind that he had went with it. Now he was talking about, and I'm actually going to kind of pull this up on the screen for those that are watching. That way you can kind of see this as well, see what I'm actually talking about. But he talked about like a type 1 and a type 2 type of a clickbait where he called the type 1 type of a clickbait that's good. I think he also referred to it as like legit bait because it's very truthful. But he put this on this like scale where he's calling a dead zone, which is basically where nobody's clicking. You know, so if you look at this as being a square and you've got a just left and right, up and down axis in the middle of it, on the far right, he's saying that it is misleading and it is sensationalized. And then on the far left, it is obviously very honest and very truthful. Then you've got at the top of that, withholding information. So you're kind of leaving that curiosity gap in there. And then at the very bottom is you're giving them all the information they could possibly know. Now, the problem is that the closer you get to what he's referring to as type 2 clickbait, or I think he calls it like the dupe shoot, because it's all about duping and, you know, tricking the audience to click. That one is misleading and it's withholding information. Whereas the other end is that dead zone that he talks about. And in that dead zone is giving you all the information and it is 100% honest. The problem is that most people, and there have been psychological studies on this, the closer that we get to sensationalism, the more our interest peaks. And when you start to tap into that curiosity loop, then all of a sudden you're really getting it. So the closer you get to where the type 2, the bad type of clickbait is, the more likely you're going to get people to actually click on that information. That is, I'll make sure to link it so you guys can check it out because I can't even do it justice with what he was talking about through the whole thing. But to me, that really comes down to what are we putting out there? Mm-hmm. Like, and that's part of like when I, you know, growing up in the fishing, you know, with fishing with grandpa a lot. And I remember him saying, use the live bait because at least you gave the fish a little treat before you hooked him in and made him your treat. So it's like, you know, you're rewarding them with what they thought they were going to get, even though afterwards they are your reward. So it was like, I get that versus the fake bait would then be, you thought you were going to get something good and you didn't get it. And now you're my dinner. And that's where it's like the internal of what will I use? What will I not use? So if I look at that spectrum of withholding information versus giving them all the information, how many times have you seen thumbnails that they give everything? Like what is in the title is also on the thumbnail.
Me.
And they've shown you like 15 different images from it.
Also me.
And it's like, but nobody wants to click on it because it's like, well, I just saw everything on your thumbnail. Why do I need to click at this point?
Yep.
So if you've got more to tell them, you obviously want to leave a curiosity gap. You pique their interest enough that they're like, oh, this looks interesting. This looks like something I might want. I better click to find out if I actually want it.
Man, I've got a visceral response to this. I'm going to try and withhold it a little bit.
No, give the visceral response.
I can't. I hate this. I hate this game. This dance back and forth. I don't know how people. I can respect fishermen who their opinions evolve over time, and you know they're working with what they've got, and they've got their own opinion. I hate this when it comes to YouTube because it's like, well, you need to make sure that you put enough on the thumbnail that it is so sensational that people will want to click because they identify with it. They see something that is enticing, but not something that's necessarily going to reveal too much of what you've got going on in your story, but you don't want to miss out on anything that like would actually get them there. So then you have to become this like mind reader of like, okay, I'm going to have to determine I'm after this particular audience and this is what this person is into. And so when they come across my thumbnail and I show them this, they are going to think this. And then you're like none of that even when did we become psychologists in video content creators? By the way, that spectrum in my opinion, started off I would say even that video is old. I would say that it has rotated from my view. I don't know which way it is on y'all's screens, but
Right.
more towards the sensational and just the absolutely extreme. That those are quite a bit more acceptable now than they ever have been. I don't know why. Jesse and I, we used to watch a YouTuber, Texas YouTuber. I can't remember his last name now. Matt something, but he has Off the Ranch and Demolition Ranch and all of those, guns and animals shows and stuff. Well, he would make these thumbnails that were just like not in the ballpark of what he was talking about. Like they were clickbait through and through. She kind of Casey
Yep.
and I did it one time. She left me. She finally did it. She left me. And what he means is for the afternoon. Ah, am I frozen? There we go. For the
Right.
afternoon.
Yeah.
But you click on the thing because you're like, Casey, no, man. I know you've been spending a lot of time at work, but what's going on here? And there's a rub there for me where it's like, I know what you're doing.
Yes.
I know you are. I can see that fake shiny bait. And because I love you, I'm going to take that bait. I've been watching you for so long. Like, I love your stuff. And I know
Right.
there's going to be somewhat of a payoff there, but I felt a little duped even by Casey, and it stole some of my trust. And when it happened with Matt, we didn't have the same longevity of this is silly because this is YouTube and I'm talking about a relationship that I'm having with people that don't even know I exist. So the relationship between Matt and us, we stopped watching him because the 15th time he said, "You're not going to believe it when this happens and blows up in my face." And it didn't actually, it was something very minor, like a popcorn bag that blows up in his face. It was like,
Right.
yeah, man, I think we're done here. So we've given you so much of our trust and the payoff wasn't there, which I know is part of what our job is.
Yeah.
But it's like the payoff wasn't there. I feel like it was a depreciation of that trust. I just don't want to do that. But I don't know if I'm doing that because I'm not a psychologist and I can't figure out what my audience is receiving off of that whole process. I yield the floor.
Okay, so there's a lot I want to help unpack on this, at least from how I'm thinking it. But before I do that, I want to get to some of the comments because I had asked, on the show, I said, what are your thoughts on clickbait? Should we use it? When is it bad? And so I want to get to a few of these, and we may have to, run a little bit different than what we've done with the last couple episodes because there's some points that are made here that I'm seeing, and I think we may want to add some commentary on it. The first of which comes right from Charles Nickens saying, if Christian cannot use clickbait, then most pastors are living in sin with their sermon titles. And it's like, I mean,
guilty. Yeah.
You're not wrong. And you think about that, like, what are we doing with sermon titles? And I know that this is aimed at the pastors that are out there, and they are crafting sermon titles and they're trying to announce them ahead of time. Not everybody does that. Some don't even have topical messages. It's just exegetical. So all is, we're in Ephesians 1 today. Next week it's Ephesians 2. That may be your case, and if that's the case, that's fine. I'm one of those that I'm often doing this, not just with a sermon title, but then the whole sermon series. So I just got finished with this sermon series that's Are We There Yet? And like that was, people had no clue what we're talking about. It said, Are we there yet? And it shows like a van on a highway, and that's about it. And then like each sermon title for that 3-part series was that trials create character, trials create trust, trials create opportunity. And if I'm the congregation and I'm hearing somebody say that trials create opportunity, my curiosity is piqued. Where are you going with this, Pastor? Because I'm not sure I agree. And trials create trust or trials create character. Where are you going? I want to know more. So it's definitely I'm guilty of this, where even with my sermon titles, trying to craft a title in such a way that if the church knows, hey, next week we're starting this new series, Are We There Yet? And talking about how trials create character. Huh? Well, now we want to know. So I get that. Yeah, I get that. He says, I guess I hate clickbait because most of it is cheesy.
I think that changes, Charles, as you get into it. There's my dog going crazy. Anyway, I think that changes once you get into it because, like, it's just what everyone is doing. I mean, I'm not sure how long you've been on YouTube, but whenever you watch your favorite creators, and they are all of them, Joshua Verwers, Jared Brown, everybody included, we're using some version, whether we think so or not, because that scale is subjective. There's like, you just kind of get used to it. And since it is shifting to the more extreme, it's like, yeah, I mean, you kind of have to keep up. So I don't know. I mean, like, I get it. It's cheesy. I agree. Yeah. I agree too. Especially everybody knows the YouTuber faces. Joshua, could you demonstrate a few YouTuber faces for us? Yeah. He's like, what? I'm trying to prepare the show, son. What? Yeah, those. We're all tired of those.
I've got a list of them. Yeah.
93 of them? Yeah, 93 from him, 60 some odd from me. They're all the same. We did them the other day, and it was like, let's come up with let's batch, do a whole bunch of faces, and we'll mix them in. And you realize by about the 10th one, you're like, oh, this is the same face over and over, but it's the YouTuber face.
But you've got to do different variations on how gaping your mouth is. So I mean, we gotta.
How surprised are you?
All right, Dean is saying, I think clickbait is necessary here on YouTube. Yeah. Where it goes wrong for me is when it's disconnected from anything we're saying and completely contradicts what we're saying. Fair enough. I definitely...
Have you done that?
When it's a disconnect, yes. That's where I see it really going wrong, because then it is deceptive. And that's the thing for me, like with the clickbait, with the thumbnails, is this deceptive? And that can be hard because some people may not see things the way that I see them, so they may interpret it as being deceptive, even though that wasn't the intention. And I have to realize that some of that I can't really control. Like, I can't control how people receive everything that I do. I can do my best to put it forward in a way that it's not perceived as that, but I can't guarantee that. So
I took a run at this, man. Looks like 3 weeks ago. I was looking to see when I released that video. And this is as close to the edge as I feel like I've ever gotten, because I knew it was potentially controversial. And I think the name of the video is like, my not so common thoughts on overturning Roe versus Wade. And that's just because I was just trying to get real with how I felt, the excitement, balancing that with the work that's still out there to be done, blah, 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 those types of things. And I was shocked by how uncommon my perspective was just in the comments of whenever I've been talking to some of my friends. And the thumbnail, which was not a good thumbnail at all. It's what, you got me? There it is. Okay, so see where it says an unpopular opinion, which is bad. If anybody who knows YouTube knows this is bad because it's hidden behind the time marker. It's all the colors are not my colors. It's all the wrong advice. But I have keep abortion legal up there in the dead center of this thing. And I thought, I'm going to ride the line on this because I know to my crew, they're going to be like, what? But maybe there'll be somebody who's enticed enough to click on it. And then I got to thinking, but is that shopping for the wrong fish? Is that fishing for the wrong crew that's just going to invite a whole bunch of hate? It hasn't. I mean, it's not like it's a viral video, 120 something views, but like.
Well, hey, and to be honest, when I first saw that, I was like, Jared.
Yep. Jared.
But I had to watch. I had to see where you're going, because it was like, now, and here's part of the problem. Some of that, if it's a disconnect, like what Dean was saying, if it winds up disconnecting, or even being, what did he say, completely contradicting what we're saying, that's where, like, for me, and I don't think you did this. I could see where other people might say you did that with it, because my first thought was, if he's just hooking me in just to get a click,
He was.
And I might have an issue with this.
He was.
Now,
Totally
then I
100%.
watched it, and it was like, all right, I see what he's doing. And here would be the thing. If I were to tweak and edit this one thing, having watched it, and I'll go back over here just so we can see it. But if I were to tweak and edit this one thing, I lost Jared on here too. How did I lose
Hello?
Jared?
Hey, where's everybody? Guys, are you
his
still
face
there?
went off.
Whoa, what is that? Look at me. Wow.
There's Jared.
Look at that texture on these walls.
Yeah. Oh, I think I went with the wrong screen share. There we go.
There I am.
So if I were to do one thing different with this, like I probably would have taken just the background where it was to keep abortion legal. I would have made that a lot bigger. I would have removed my unpopular opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would have left my not so common thoughts on, or the title I would have left the same, but for the thumbnail alone, I would have left, the keep abortion legal. I would have made it a little bit bigger so it took up more of that space.
Doing this.
And then for your face, let me look through some of your other videos and see, because like I would be doing almost like this one on breaking the rules. I would do that kind of a
like
face,
a maybe,
where it's like, what am I thinking when I see this?
oh my gosh, you could get me in trouble.
That's probably how I would have done it. Now, whether that's right
look
or wrong.
how silly this is. While we're on this page, look how silly that is. Well, never mind.
Oh.
Goodbye, page. See you later.
What
I can verbally say it. So just as compared to my normal videos, that one's higher.
Yeah. So here's the other thing that I would be interested to know on that is just, did it work?
And that's the thing. I wonder, was it the click, which we can get into the back end and that's some deep dive stuff, but just off the top of my head, was it the click from the controversial thumbnail and title, which yes, in a way it was because they had to get on it to watch it, or was it because people watched it longer and YouTube served it up to more people because that was more of a hot topic, trending topic. But also I was sharing my heart in where people aren't necessarily speaking out about that, at least at that time. They weren't saying anything. There was a huge overturning in Roe versus Wade, and nobody wanted to talk about it. And I thought that was crazy. Yeah. Anyway, so I wonder which was the little minuscule boost on that particular video. Yeah,
you and I are gonna have to jump in on the analytics on that because I just want to know. But we'll do that later. Diana says every created thumbnail is a form of clickbait to entice a viewer to click. The negative clickbait schemes are those that give 0% of the intended promise, desire of the title and thumbnail. Yeah. And then she was saying incorrect in the education space because they're wanting to know if you have the answer and solve their problem. So clarity equals more clicks. Different for other forms of content though, like vlogs. I'm not in the education space.
You're in the inspirtainment.
But inspirtainment, edutainment. Like I would, more inspirtainment. But I would say there, I don't know as it's necessarily wrong. Like with the clarity isn't necessarily what gets the click in the education space, at least as a viewer of the educational stuff. When somebody puts too much information on there, there's no point. Like if somebody says the best
and it's there
and it's right there, I'm like, I'm only going to click if I was actually looking to find a review. So if the title then said, this is a review, that's the only way I'm going to click. Now, if it said, is this the best? Now I've clicked because you've left a curiosity loop.
There's 3 of them or something.
Yeah. Yeah, like something like that. If it's a comparison, if it's a contrast, because I've done some of those videos. Like even if we looked at one of them that I did that was, and I would say it was actually in that educational space just because of, man, I hate my autoplay at times. Let's go over here because there was one of these. This one. So the Video Micro, Deity D4 Duo, and then whatever the other one was. That is a confused, perplexed face.
What a thumbnail. Look at that, guys. What a thumbnail. Can we agree on that?
And then all it is, it's just showing the product, but the title is, why did I buy these? Like, that is a clickbait type of title. Why did I buy these? Now, within the very beginning of it, I talk about me having gas, the gear acquisition syndrome, where I buy too much gear. But I talk about, yes, I buy too much gear, but part of the reason that I buy that gear is because I'm trying to figure out what will actually work for me. So I do deliver on that, but that's where it's like, I don't know. Diana goes on, she does say that bad clickbait is bad because it's the fisher that rips your jaw open versus removing the hook and feeding you what you want. And that can be, like, I think we're good in here where it's one of those we're talking about, you know, like she says, the 0% of the intended promise or desire of the title and thumbnail. And so that's the other thing, like an excellent...
Is that subjective?
It can be very subjective because what one person was expecting to get out of it may not be what somebody else. And from hey, let's put this in a pastoral context. We get this in a pastoral context. How many times have you preached a message? And I'm expecting a 100%. How many times have you preached a message and yet everybody gets something different out of it?
Every time.
Every time.
Every time.
And how often is it a case that it's like, that's not even what I thought anybody was going to get out of it, and yet most of the people got something similar to this, and that wasn't even on my radar in prepping this message. And so that's where it can be difficult with the thumbnail that we're trying to put forward because somebody can do that. Like, hey, probably one of my biggest clickbait, yeah, okay, actually I'm going to show it. Because one of my biggest clickbait ones that I've ever done, I'll scroll down. I know exactly which one it is.
Augie, I see your face. Stands out in a sea of Joshua.
Yeah, this one. I'm deleting my YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Like, that was clickbait 100%. Like, that, and that was on that axis of where is it at for leaving information out, creating the curiosity gap. Oh, I'm on that line in my mind as I'm creating this. And then how much of it is sensational? Yeah, it's riding that line. Like, in that axis, I saw as I was creating that so close. But then some of the comments, people were even saying, I thought you meant you were deleting this channel.
Oh, of course they did.
And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking,
them to
that's exactly what I wanted them. Right. Like, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I deleted my second channel. Or I'm deleting my YouTube channel. Like, both of those are truthful, honest statements. I did knowingly understand that some people would click on it thinking it was this channel and they care more about this channel than the other channel.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. And I didn't have anybody that hated me for doing that. They were just, it was like, oh, thank God. Because I thought it was this channel. I'm glad to hear it was the other channel.
You got away with that one. I thought the same thing. I'm like,
yeah,
I know what you're doing, Josh.
But
what you're doing.
Was that, out of all the thumbnails you've seen me make and all the videos I've made, that one was probably riding that corner the highest.
That was up there. Hey, go back to that view again, because we break our own rules. For instance, if you can go back to that video where we were, look at the one to the right.
Yeah.
The best. We just got through saying, I'm not going to show the arm that I'm using. Otherwise, why would I click on it? 3.3 thousand.
No. I will share. I do think that putting the product there is good. If that's where I said if it was too much information. Now, I think what I had initially done with this one is I actually put a different title on that when I first started it. It was, is this the best microphone for YouTube?
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
And I had that initially. The thumbnail has always been the same because I saw the click-through rate on it was great. And this was one, if you remember, I actually had it on that channel that I then deleted.
Yep. And
then I brought it over to this one. And on that other channel, I mean, it was like I deleted the channel and I think that was at 10K or 15K, something like that. The thumbnail worked. The title didn't. And that's when I had looked at it, and like when I was searching with TubeBuddy, and they have the keyword searchers, and I was going to be exposed to a broader audience by just putting best microphone boom arm rather than is this the best. And I don't know why it sees it differently. So I played with it on that other channel, and as soon as I had changed the title, the views jumped up. So it was like, all right, well, I'll just leave it. But I am with you that, like, if that had said the best on it, I wouldn't have clicked. Like, for me, I wouldn't have. Now, when I see the product, because that's like, this is an MKBHD type of a thumbnail. I like the fact that his thumbnails are pretty clean. He just shows the product up there so you can see it. But then it's the title that then gets me, which that's the other part of this, is that in the perfect scenario, your thumbnail will take their eyes to go down to the title, and then that combination actually will get them to click. Now, a perfect thumbnail, if there's such a thing, they click just by seeing the thumbnail. And part of that clicking just by seeing the thumbnail is either because the thumbnail's that good or because your branding and the community and the relationship you have.
There's so much to it, because you showed me last week on this show that you had been watching a YouTuber couple longer and longer and longer videos. We were giving you a hard time about
Karen Nate.
Yeah, Karen Nate, is that what it's called? Yep. So I clicked on their channel, haven't watched any of their videos yet. I saw their thumbnails, and it kind of took me back a little bit, because it was like, these are the exact same. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously they're exciting, and they've been places and they're standing in, monuments and places and riding on the backs of camels and whatnot. But their thumbnail style was exactly what Jessie and I had made for like months.
Right.
And I thought to myself, interesting. So this is beyond. This has something to do with community. This has something to do with, previous drive of folks already there, flowing over to it. This has something to do with, where. Anyway, there's so many factors that go into these.
Yeah.
The click through of a thumbnail, the enticement to click upon, and whether it is clickbait or not. This is so in depth. Which is why in the beginning I said I hate it.
Right. Well, and that's one of those that
I wish you could just go and run away.
Dean had a similar story to what you're saying, and this is where the real problem of taking clickbait too far into the negative space is a problem, because he says one of the worst clickbaits that he's ever seen, a thumbnail that said so-and-so left us, making clear the husband walked out on his family. Turns out he just went on a weekend solo trip. I no longer watch them.
Yeah.
And that is kind of what my thinking is on. You do run the risk of where there's that quadrant of misleading and sensational. The closer you get to it, the more likely people are going to be clicking on it. And this is just human condition. Why is it that when you're driving down the road and there's a car wreck, everybody turns their head to look at it? But the problem is when you're turning your head to look at it, there can become danger in that. And so that's the thing, like with the thumbnails. If we get too far in there, like you or like Dean, you just stop watching it. And I'm sure I've done that, where I've made a video that could be that sensational. And I think this comes back to what I was talking about, where it's the intentions behind it, the motives behind it, and what do you truly feel? Is this deceptive or not? Is what I'm trying to do in creating this, is it intended to just get a click, just so I can get a view? That's the only thing I care about. Or is it that we're trying to get them click because we know if they watch it, they're actually going to get rewarded for the watching? And it's such a thin line, and it's such a gray area. And you talked about it being subjective. Man, it is. And I mean, where is that?
I don't know. I'm happy. I've got a reference here. I'm happy to know that while it is shifting over time, we're not the only ones who've done it. Even the old timers did it and do it, because I had a sermon title for 1 Corinthians 7, which would have been I can't even remember what it was, but it's boring. You know, all my sermon titles are just like my YouTube titles. Nobody wants to listen to it. Nobody wants to click on it. But once you get into it, you're like, hey, this is a good time. I don't know. It's my weak point, thumbnails and titles.
Yeah.
But my father-in-law, so it had something to do with, let's just call it sexual purity or so. I can't remember the exact contents of that particular text, but I think it has something in there. And his title was Godly Sexual Gratification.
I love it.
And I'm like, young man, you need to calm down. Whenever he goes to title it, it's like, well,
okay.
I'll click on that. It's the highest. He's got on his podcast. It is the highest clicked.
Oh, for sure.
Episode, hands down.
For sure. Well, and that's part of the topic at hand. Was like the topic that he's talking about. It's enticing to people. They want to know more about that topic. Why? Because it does tap into the humanity that we have. But his title for the topic, like, yeah, that's dangling the bait in front of you, and it's like, come click on this.
That's podcast clickbait right there.
Oh, and there's the proof. Like, we did that. So back when I was doing the marriage ministry, we even used that with the actual marriage seminar that we did. It was called, what was it? Becoming One was the marriage seminar. But the main that I'll say is like the aha piece, the component, like that miraculous component. It's like, if you do this, you will get this. That exercise we called the intimacy exercise. And every single couple that came through there, they're hearing intimacy exercise, and you see the guy's eyes start to light up, and some of the ladies are starting to roll their eyes. And it had nothing to do with a physical interaction, because it was how we defined and biblically defined intimacy, not the same way that the world defines it. This is also part of the other, I think, dilemma that we have as Christian content creators, as vlog pastors. We're trying to convey this message that God has put on our heart, or share our lives in a compelling way, because whether it's our lives or whether it's the words, there is something there that is going to impact people, something there that has a life-changing component. It's not just, entertainment, it is inspiration. And so we're trying to convey that through, but they'll never get it if they don't sit through it. And they can't sit through it unless they've actually sat down, unless they've actually clicked. That's the struggle. So it's like, how do we define it? And there's the subjectivity to it. And it's why, we started this off with saying, how do you define clickbait?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? And that's where I do agree with you that there comes an area where it is just, it's too much. Like, if I'm looking at who's the king of clickbait titles, and I'm talking good clickbait titles. Here's the other thing.
It'd be Mr. Beast or somebody. Yeah.
Right. I would say Mr. Beast, or even Ryan Trahan.
Yeah.
He's right up there with them. So it's like, who is, like, okay, so I believe there's good clickbait and there's bad clickbait. And I don't want to define those as two separate words. I know others do. Some call it, legit bait or truth bait or false bait, or like Veritas, dupe shoot. Different things. I don't really care. To me, it's clickbait. It's all clickbait, but there's good and there's bad. And that's the simplicity of it for me. The best at good clickbait, in my mind, is Mr. Beast. Ryan Trahan is right behind him there. And Ryan's just recently gotten better with that. Now, Mr. Beast, the thing is every time I see Mr.
Because
Beast's
of Mr.
thumbnail,
Beast.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because Mr. Beast just shares all that stuff. To me, the reason that his thumbnails are so clickable, they are over the top. They are kind of sensational. He finds a moment inside that video, or it may not even be legitimately inside that video, but it is relative to the video.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if you saw the one, was it yesterday? He didn't even upload it. It was a video that he didn't like, so he said he wasn't going to upload it and he was going to trash it, but Ludwig happened to be over and convinced him to let him upload it on his channel. So there's a Mr. Beast video on Ludwig's channel, and it was, I buried $100,000. First person to find it wins it. And the thumbnail is this hole in the ground with cash and Mr. Beast in it. Now, nowhere in the video do you see cash in a hole in the ground with Mr. Beast in it. You do see Mr. Beast. You do see a hole with cash in it. And that's where it's like, once it plays through, I see the video. I watch the video and I'm like, okay, he crafted this thumbnail image, but every element that was in that image was in the video.
How did you feel afterwards? Did you feel like there was enough of those pieces, that there were enough of those pieces to string together whatever Diana was talking about, more percentages of a positive? How did you feel?
I felt I got 100% what I expected. I didn't expect Mr. Beast to necessarily be in the pit of money. I thought he might be, but he might not be. And it didn't matter to me because once I saw the image, I'm like, what is he in? I mean, it's a thumbnail. It's small.
Yeah.
What is he in? Then I look at the title. I buried $100,000, in the ground. First person to get it wins. So then I'm like, okay, that's what I expected. I expected he buried $100,000. Somebody's going to get in the ground and get it. Perfect. One that maybe was slightly more deceptive is one of Ryan Trahan's bigger ones, and it's where he survived 48 hours in silence or whatever it was. And that image of his thumbnail, him sitting in a chair with his hands over his head and it's all black and everything, and other people have replicated that thing. I didn't see that inside that image. That thumbnail was not inside there. But the concept that the thumbnail was trying to convey was in there. Mm-hmm. So I kind of look at thumbnails even like a book cover, where it's just something to try to catch your attention and get you to get on the inside. In that aspect of it, I'm like, there can be good, but maybe Diana's point about what percentage, and bad is when there's 0%. Now, here's the problem. For me, it might be 0%. For you, it might be 10%. For others, it might be 100%. Subjective.
Well, I have an underlying philosophy that somebody finally, I can't quote him, otherwise I would. I apologize. I came across a fella's video the other day, and here's basically it encapsulated. Ministry first. So that may not translate to some of you guys, but some of you will. As long as what I'm putting forth isn't for the sake of people's views, the applause of man, as we call it in our business. As long as it is ministry first, then whatever it takes, I'm going to release that puppy. If it is for views, and hear me, because some of you guys, y'all have, if I can get it before more eyeballs, then that's ministry. No. As long as I have peace in my spirit, man, about this was done with integrity. I want it to be enticing for the people that God is after, and in my heart, I can send it through with this was ministry. Then I have confidence in it. And whenever I am thinking about how many views is this going to get, then I need to probably do some re-examining and figure out before I release that thing. So we've in a very real practical way, Jessie and I just did a Facebook ad. I've not ever done, God's working on me a lot in these areas. I've never done something that low quality with what titles, what is not clickable. It's not something that you would go on, but it was ministry and it was real, and we released it and God has blessed it and it's been incredible. And so it's just kind of one of those things that goes to show that's like, I don't know what your contract is with the Lord and how it pertains to this conversation, but for me, as long as if anybody out there hears this and it pings in your spirit, man, ministry first, and then, not the applause of man, but ministry first, send it.
Yep. Hey, let's get to a few more
Sure.
comments and questions here, and then I want to kind of wrap up with some final thoughts that we might have here. Dean was saying, I think that Jared's is fine, and he's talking about that thumbnail, because unpopular, with your unpopular opinion, is subjective. For some circles, his opinion would be a completely unpopular opinion. Subjective words and questions are great for clickbait. Yes. I would agree with that. Diana, in response to where I was given a little pushback on the education, says, for example, the plain Jane title, ABC setup for XYZ tool. That's what I mean by education. There are variations of those things, like video simplified videos, comparison, because there's curiosity, interest involved. Yeah, I'm good with that. Wayne saying Augie's face in the decluttered thumbnail. Yeah, it is good. Diana
That was a
saying,
great one.
Yeah, that deleting the channel clickbait is on the line for sure. Laugh out loud. But there was a payoff. Plus, you don't do it every video.
Right.
It was just some spice.
You don't say Genevieve finally left me
Right.
to the mall. To go to the
a
mall.
little spice here and there is always okay. Jessica's saying, I feel like clickbait on my channel would not be well received.
Sorry, that's funny. You don't get it because her channel is a math channel. It's a teaching, like it's a resource for her students. So I don't know.
Well, but her channel is also public, right?
Her channel is public.
So here's where I would set there, and I would say, hey, Jessica, because yours is definitely education based, look at what Veritasium does. Because he actually had one that he even talked about in that video where he was talking about, and I can't even remember. It's a math problem that is 3x plus 1 equals whatever it was. And he had to change the title. He left the thumbnail with just the equation in there, but he changed the title. At first, he was actually putting in whatever that equation is. He put the title of that in, but realized only math nerds are going to get that. So he put that out, and then he changed the title to "This Simple Equation No One Can Solve." And then went through and skyrocketed and took that thing up because of that. So that's where I think clickbait, it depends on how we define clickbait. Sensational clickbait, I would agree with you. It probably is not going to be well received. But if it was thumbnails crafted in more of a way to entice people to click on them, maybe. But again, this is all subjective and depending on what the audience is. What's your audience? Who are you trying to get? Diana says a great example of those who towed the line very well with great payoffs was Ryan Trahan's latest Penny series.
Yep.
Yes. Diana, I just want to know what Jesus's clickbait title was for the 2 fish and 5 loaves sermon. Honestly, I would sit there and say that Jesus used lots of clickbait in his statements. Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? I'm curious.
That's
what
right.
Does that mean?
That's
now
exactly
I want to
right.
know. I'm following you because you said follow me and I'll get this.
Eat my flesh,
I have no
drink
idea
my
how
blood.
we're going to get there. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely one. Vaughn is saying there needs to be a balancing act because some people do low quality videos, thumbnails, etc. as an excuse not to please man.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's where I want to start in on my final thoughts on this, picking up on what Vaughn says and what you just said, kind of about that, Jared. I would be in that, and we talked about this, I think, last week a little bit where we were talking about low turnout, low views. If I have done all I can do, if I have made myself a learner and I'm always trying to improve, and with the philosophy of can I be more effective in what God has called me to do? If I feel I have done that and I've done all I can do with this, send it. And I don't care beyond that. If I look at it and be like, you know what? I could put in a little bit more effort on this. I'm not quite sure I've done all I can do. I haven't used all of the gifts that God's given me to do. And I'm just trying to send it for the sake of sending it. That's where I would say maybe we need to work a little bit harder on that especially if there's stuff that we're leaving on the table that he's called us to do on that. Now, I do agree that we should not be trying to please man whatsoever. When I look at clickbait, my final kind of thoughts on this is the title and the thumbnail is all just packaging for the product inside. It is the method that we are using to deliver the message. If they can't get past the packaging, how are they going to enjoy what's inside? If I'm still using old methods that no longer work, why am I thinking that the message is ever going to be heard? And that's where I do agree that it is ministry first. It is the message first. It's get that thing out there. That has to be the primary of importance. And then secondarily, is there a way that I can package this message, use a method to deliver this message that is more effective? And if there is, and I'm aware of it and I know how to use it, then I ought to do it. But making sure that it doesn't come at the cost of the message. I don't want to do anything that would leave a bad taste on what God is calling me to do. And that's where I do struggle with that sometimes on the thumbnails, because it's like, I don't want to go that far. But I also understand there's this dilemma. Like, and Jessica, she said this, that toying with people's emotions is tacky. Yes, toying with people's emotions is tacky. I definitely agree. And at what point is what we're trying to do with the title and the thumbnail, the clickbait, at what point does it just become manipulation? You know, that's the thing that scripturally, manipulation is in there with witchcraft. It is of the devil. I don't want to manipulate people. At the same time, and this is not to justify or to dissuade what I'm saying, I don't want to manipulate people. I know that there's something that I'm trying to convey that people need to hear, because if I didn't truly believe that, why would I be making it? Mm-hmm. And then if that's the case, what can I do to just be more effective in that? And some of that is understanding humanity. And it's not like I'm trying to get them to do what I want. I'm trying to get them to do what I know they need, or what I believe they need, at least. And that's where it comes from. I think in my mind, it comes from more of a pure motive. And that's where the motive is not trying to get them to do something wrong, not trying to get them to do something bad, not trying to get them to do something that is only serving me, but trying to get them to do something that I believe is for their benefit. And that's where that balancing act is for me. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's very subjective. I'm listening to you. I hear you. I'm just thinking to myself, after 300 and some odd videos, many tries at this thing, I've noticed that it really didn't much matter. I mean, I have appreciated the conversation today, but
yeah.
the videos that needed to end up at their desired recipient, the Lord found a way. I mean, some of the worst thumbnails have had, from my opinion, the best response. And I don't want to imply that we shouldn't work to the best of our ability to learn our craft and make it, applicable, make it easily digestible, just like we should a sermon or anything else. I have ultimate faith in our Creator that as we're doing what we've been called to do, He's going to make sure it finds a way, or doesn't, whenever we're distracted on certain shenanigans. Anyway, 300 and some odd videos. Several years later, you look back on them and go, I put a lot of time and effort into that one, and it did nothing.
Right.
Whereas that one really resonated with people when I just shared the message that was on my heart. And the thumbnails could not be set juxtaposition any further on good versus modern day, what would be good versus bad.
Yeah.
It's really like you were saying, I do not want to get into manipulation, and I would probably lean harder into just posting it and sending it up. At the same time, we need to make this palatable so that it can reach that intended audience, and therein lies the the loop
Right.
that we can get, stuck in. The pendulum, for some of you guys, swing to one side, then back to the other, and I'm sure it's somewhere in between.
Yeah. Hey, before we cash out of here, can I show you one more that I thought of yours as you were saying that?
Yeah.
That maybe is the most clickbait title and thumbnail that you have ever done.
I can't wait. Throw it up there.
I went over to your channels. I sorted by the most popular. It is actually the second most popular. Walking 50 miles in 24 hours.
That is so true.
When I saw that, my first thought was, Jared just walked 50 miles in 24 hours of one day. Like today is Wednesday, and he walked 50 miles from like midnight to midnight.
Yep. And was the
that's what I thought.
Goal. Well, that was what I thought too whenever I started making the video, which is where that whole video comes into process.
Yeah.
And that video is supposed to be bookended by several videos that, being Jared, the life of Jared has never continued to make. But yeah,
right.
that was the actual intended goal of that video. It was much more difficult than I intended, than I knew it to be.
Yeah.
And I totally get that one. Yeah.
No, like I thought it was
on the money.
It
That's
was
a clickbait.
It's a clickbait title that is such a Ryan Trahan type of a video, and that was before I think you had even really discovered who Ryan Trahan was. It might have even been before Ryan was making those type of videos. Like the blues and the greens that pop in that, the way that you see you walking, and that's where it did trick me a little bit because I clicked on it, but I wasn't disappointed in it because you delivered on what it said. It's just not how I interpreted what you said.
And to give fuller context for you guys who are watching, don't give them
context. Make them click on it.
Yeah, click on it and watch it. It's mediocre at best. But the
click
thing
on
is,
it, watch it, and then tell us if you think that that's bad clickbait or good clickbait.
Well, the thing is this: on the back end, the numbers on the back end is people hate this video, but they still click on it.
Right.
There's something about that thumbnail and title that they want to click on it, but they will stay no time at all once they realize what's going down.
And that just popped into my mind because when I've logged in and watched your video using another device, so like when you've seen some of these videos, like if I go back even into newest, like you can see the red lines, I'm watching everything, but the ones where, hey, talk about clickbait, getting naked.
Hey, listen.
Like, come on. No, the only thing that would have made it more clickbait is like if you were in a robe. But so when you see these that I haven't watched, I actually have watched, but when I've watched them using one of my other accounts, that's oftentimes when I'm watching these.
We all believe you, Josh.
Don't make me prove it. But when I've done that, that's where that other one, this 50 miles in 24 hours, it always comes up in the recommended. And that tells me, well, because those other accounts, it hasn't seen it. And then it says, this is one of the higher click-throughs that he has. You should watch this one. You'll like this if you like him, which is just kind of fascinating to me. And hey, before we leave, can I just say publicly, congrats on 1K, dude.
Hey, thanks, man.
I know it's been a bit, but hey, congrats anyways. That's awesome.
It's been a tumultuous time over at the channel where we switched names and we kind of rebranded there for a bit. We took the videos in a different direction, as hopefully some of you guys who are subscribed over there have seen. And so we went through a bit of a, we were losing tens of people a day. I don't know if that was a YouTube algorithm cleanse, but we lost quite a few people, and I just didn't want to say anything because it was like it would peak up over 1,000 and it would dip down to like 970, and then you'd start building back up again, and then it would dip back down. It's like, I'm just gonna enjoy the ride.
Right. Yeah, and I do think there's a little bit of that YouTube cleanse that happens all the time. Anytime you get to one of those milestones, there's a dip. Like,
Diana,
and that
18K, by the way.
Yes. Awesome. So, hey, let's go ahead, wrap up this episode, and then we'll continue to chat a little bit with everybody here in the comments, address some of those final ones. Want to thank y'all for being here, for joining us on this 55th episode of the Vlog Pastors podcast. Don't forget, leave a like, hit subscribe, share it with people if you are blessed and encouraged by it. And I guess until next week, when we have no idea what we're talking about yet.
So true.
Stay blessed. Enjoy God's best. Have a fantastic day.